I would like to first thank you for all taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. My name is Laura Kim, and I am a technology consultant for SNL. Before I start, I would like to address a couple of housekeeping items. First, can you please make sure all of you are on mute? And then there's also a chat box for any questions you would like to ask. Please put them in there and we will definitely address those at the end. So again, I am with SNL. I think a lot of you on this call may be familiar with us, but for those who are not, I would just love to tell you a little bit about who we are. We are a technology consulting company. We're based in Arcadia. And actually, as of February, we're turning 23 years old. At SNL, the approach we take is, for us, our goal with our clients is to ensure that their data and critical business applications are not only secure, but are also highly available. We kind of achieve this through three main areas of focus, which is your network and Microsoft infrastructure, backup and DR solutions, and security solutions. We play in other areas as well, but that's kind of where we focus in those three areas. We are an engineering-centric company, and I can hands down say that is truly what sets us apart from anybody else. We have over 18 highly skilled and knowledgeable engineers. They are the makeup and foundation of this company. All of our engineers have training and certifications for all of the solutions we provide. So not only are we there to implement, but we can support all of the solutions we offer. So again, we can assist our clients from beginning to end with any project. Our goal, my goal and SNL's goal is to become a trusted partner with our clients. We truly want to be there in the beginning stages of any project that you are thinking of, as we want to help think, plan, and build it out. We do not take a cookie cutter approach. We offer customized solutions for all of our clients, as we know no two environments are the same. As we are working with our clients on projects or whatnot, our goal also is to help minimize costs while building efficiencies. And we do this through constant communication, and that's both with the client and internally as a team. We like to pride ourselves that we're very proactive versus being reactive. So again, we like to foresee things that might come up and address them right away, resulting in helping build efficiency and time and building down costs for our clients. So that's kind of who we are in a nutshell, SNL. We work with many different partners. One of our strongest partners is Palo Alto. And so now I would like to introduce the Palo Alto team. Tom Cochran, he is a regional account manager for Southern California, and his engineer, Thomas Lee. They make a great team. And so I am gonna now hand it over to, I believe, Thomas Cochran. Thank you again, everybody.
Yeah, hey folks. Laura, thanks for kicking things off, and I greatly appreciate everyone joining today. As Laura mentioned, I handle the business operations for many of you folks from an account perspective, from a Palo Alto Networks perspective, I should say. I'm looking at the participant list here, and it looks like I see some familiar faces out there. So great to see. I've been working with my partner in crime, Mr. Thomas Lee, for nearly 9 years. I think our view and when we approach customers is very simple. We always believe in starting with the customer and working backwards. So a little bit more on SNL. I think Laura's being very modest. I simply view them as an extension of Palo Alto Networks. They're our largest reseller here in Southern California. So should any questions ever arise specifically about your environment, your Palo Alto Networks firewalls, your Cortex deployment, they have a wonderful, wonderful bench of engineers. I'd encourage everyone to at least at a bare minimum reach out and for some sort of best practice assessment, maybe a security lifecycle review, anything of that nature. One thing I do want to touch on prior to delving into some of the recent updates relative to 10.0, our latest code, is the Solar Storm breach. I think it's certainly safe to say that amidst learning of that breach, it left many folks, at least many of our customers, scrambling. So in the wake of that, we've teamed with SNL, and what we're offering is a complimentary service to evaluate whether your environment's been compromised. This can be something very, very similar. Excuse me. This can be something very basic. So if you have even a rudimentary SolarWinds deployment, something like for basic SNMP pulling, I would venture to say that you're still very much a candidate for this. As I mentioned, it's free of charge. What we'll do is a couple things with you in parallel, of course, with SNL. First and foremost, we'll determine how many servers you have, whether they be offline or online. And secondly, what we'll also do is we'll compile a list of domains and public IP ranges. So in the wake of that, what we're going to do is scan your network. We'll generate a report. That report will issue a verdict, either a negative verdict, or alternatively or conversely, it will issue a compromised verdict, if you will. Now, there's some measures we'll take in the wake of that, depending on what that is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to input the URL to sign up for this in the chat. When you go to that page, go down to the very bottom, input your contact information, and the Palo Alto Networks and SNL team will be reaching out to you. So again, I don't want to belabor a point, but if you do have SolarWinds in your environment, SolarWinds Orion, I would absolutely take advantage of this opportunity. That said, the focus of today is really centered around our new code 10.0. I contend amidst these, we'll call them unique times, that security has certainly taken on a heightened level of importance. And to that end, what we're hoping to do today is simply shed light on some of the ways that SNL and Palo Alto Networks are taking measures or putting measures in place to, we'll say, stymie or thwart those bad actors through 10.0 or through that new code. Again, as Laura alluded to, or as Laura mentioned, feel free to input any questions in the chat box. We'll field those after the presentation. And as a thanks for attending today, you'll all be receiving Grubhub or DoorDash gift card. I think that's the new norm given the state of the world. So let's dive in. I think a couple things. I want to be clear. I want to make this abundantly clear. What Thomas, myself, Laura, Tom Murphy, Jim Perdome, all the folks over at SNL are not saying is go dive headfirst into 10.0 today. Rather, if there's something that resonates with you, or if there's something that really speaks or pops out to you, specifically a feature within 10.0, reach out to Laura, reach out to myself, to Thomas, to Jim or Tom Murphy at SNL. And what we could do is we can unpack, or we can determine what iteration of code makes sense for your environment. Right now, Thomas and I and Laura are recommending 9.1.6 for most of our customers. Now, that's not to say that some are not on 10.0, because there are some on 10.0, but we simply want to be prudent in our approach and recommending certain revs or OSs. So just be mindful of that. The other thing, and I suppose at a high level, when I look at 10.0, candidly, a few things really stick out to me, and obviously Thomas leads a much brighter mind than I am. He'll be able to speak to this a little bit more intelligently, but there's a few key takeaways when I look at 10.0. I took the liberty of taking a screenshot for us. There's a new UI. This is considered a major release. It's analogous to from some of the we'll call them OG firewall users, OG Palo Alto Networks users. This is analogous to when we went from 7 to 8. So it's, like I said, it's considered a major release. There's over 70 new features. So it's plentiful, it's rich, it's abundant in its feature set. Really at the core or the heart of the release is our machine learning. So machine learning, it's it's a buzzword in the industry. When I think machine learning, I sort of view it as naturally a subset of artificial intelligence. So you're taking vast amounts of data over time, and you're making predictions to improve something. In this case, of course, again, keeping the bad actors at bay. And we'll kind of talk about how machine learning is being wielded by our firewalls, and how it's, again, kind of at the core of the release. So before we do that, I think it's important to always provide context to set the stage. And that said, over the last 8, 9, 10 years, the industry, and when I say industry, I'm not referring to something that's specific or unique to Palo Alto Networks. I'm talking about the industry as a whole at a very macro level. The industry at a macro level is really focused on reducing the amount of time it takes to react to new attacks. The good news, of course, is the time to create a signature and then, of course, proliferate it or apply it's gone from weeks to days to minutes. But that said, I'd venture to say that everyone on this call, every security professional, every network admin or network architect, heck, IT director and CIO, we're all aware that cyber criminals aren't sitting on their hands. They're very much adopting new techniques. They're wielding new methodology to infiltrate folks' environments. And they really have, when I kind of analyze this, they really have two distinct advantages. They have speed, so they can leverage things like personalization, automation, cloud, scale, right? But perhaps more important is this one, right? It's polymorphism. I'm a nerd like this, so I was reading a Gartner article the other day, and they were asserting, and again, I don't know how they quantify this, but they were asserting or maintaining that 97% of malware enlists or employs some sort of polymorphism, right? And I suppose why is it really popular? Why is it so prevalent? Well, in short, or I should say in a word, it's effective. It's effective because it's ever changing its attributes, right? So things like keyloggers, Trojans, bots, they're changing their file names, their file types, their encryption keys. So that said, as I switch slides, in simple terms, 10.0 really addresses just this. So over the last 15, 16 months, our R&D team, our research and development team, specifically as it pertains to wildfire, has been really laser focused on reducing the amount of time it takes to really deliver protection. So again, I don't want to be presumptuous. For those of you who aren't familiar with our wildfire service, in short, it's our cloud-based crowdsourcing platform that provides malware sandboxing. So just to give perspective, or I should say historically speaking, wildfire signatures have generally taken anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to proliferate. The beauty of 10.0 is really with this new release and with machine learning, our antivirus signatures are now distributed in real time with inline speed as soon as verdicts are available. So what this does is it really gives our customers peace of mind, and it almost gives them instant access to signatures. At that point, what you're doing is you're really minimizing your exposure time to malicious activity. You're reducing your threat vector. Thomas, Mr. Thomas Lee, I should say, 'cause there's a lot of Toms and Thomases on this call. Anything that you'd like to expand on, or maybe anything that I potentially missed as it pertains specifically to machine learning and 10.0?
Yeah, I mean, just with machine learning in general, speaking, if you have, I mean, that's certainly, Palo Alto, and I believe this is the first firewall that actually embedded the next gen firewall, not firewall, but next gen firewall actually embed machine learning capabilities. But more importantly, the wildfire component is very massive. Just to give you some context, we keep using that wildfire, and what does it do, right? That's the zero-day attacks piece of it, where you're sandboxing, creating a sandbox, for those data files, things like Windows PE files, Excel, macro files, and stuff like that, that are pretty much being utilized by the end users on a daily basis, right? That's what we do, right? That's how we access, that's how we perform our job, right? But that can change, and people can inject things into it, and the bad actors know this, right? In order to get that real-time threat in play, to prevent that real threat, so that those files get actually scanned in real time. But in order to do this, we have to actually create a distributed system, right? That all the signatures, all the files are being utilized or being pushed up by our customer base. And you're looking at about 75,000 customers out there that are participating in the wildfire, right? So you're pushing all that data up into the cloud. So if there's a little sort of unknown thing going on those files, I mean, the entire systems get updated. So that's powerful. I mean, once upon a time, I'm actually trying to create a sandbox, not try, but create a sandbox infrastructure for an organization with 500,000 employees. It was massive. I wish we had Palo Alto at that time. So this is the way to go, guys. This is definitely not in the future, but we're here. This is the best weapon that you can actually have against these zero-day signature attacks. So back to you, Tom.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. Like I said, much brighter mind than I am. Far more eloquent as well. But all joking aside, I think one of the, as we move on and as we delve deeper into 10.0, one of the most exciting features, or at least maybe one of the features that I find most exciting is really our Sd-Wan enhancements. I use the word enhancement very, very intentionally and very deliberately because, truth be told, we did release Sd-Wan on 9.1, but we've made some significant or added some significant functionality as it pertains to Sd-Wan in 10.0. Just at a very high level, I believe it's always important to provide context. So I suppose in general terms, I'd certainly argue that the market's extremely fertile for something like Sd-Wan, and I'd attribute that to a number of things. You've got folks who are looking to get rid of WAN optimization. You've got folks who are looking to rid themselves of policy-based routing. You've got folks who potentially want to leverage broadband or LTE or 3G, 4G internet more effectively, DIA. Unfortunately, when Thomas, myself, and Laura, when we really talk to a lot of our customers, or when we solicit their feedback, what they generally tell us is they have some trepidation with adopting Sd-Wan or completely getting rid of MPLS. And the primary reason is, well, last time I checked, you can't apply QoS markings and you can't enforce SLAs on the greater internet. So it's really coming down to, in terms of hesitation or trepidation, it really boils down to performance and security over the greater internet. And that's really kind of the catalyst for Sd-Wan. And listen, Thomas, myself, Laura, we're certainly not naive, right? Sd-Wan functionality at its core has been around for a long time. Policy-based routing, IPsec tunnels, they're not anything new. The real value add or value proposition associated with something like Sd-Wan is you're bundling all those existing technologies into a UI or into a GUI, and so you're really automating that manual, arduous process. So things like building a mesh on the fly, so you don't have to manage an absolute ton of VPN tunnels. Being able to do app steering, building, like I said, building a mesh on the fly. It's really profound. It's really powerful. It's really resonating with a lot of our customers. And what I will say with a great degree of conviction and certainty is trying to determine whether you should deploy a Viptela or a VeloCloud or a Silver Peak inside or outside your firewall. That's extremely difficult. A lot of my Cisco Gold partners won't even touch SD-WAN deployments or Cisco SD-WAN deployments because, candidly, it's difficult to determine where do you put that thing. So our philosophy at Palo Alto Networks is why not let us incur that functionality? You let the LAN circuits terminate on the firewall. This is simply licensed as another subscription, analogous to threat prevention or wildfire. It's one less box. It's one less renewal to worry about. One slight wrinkle is there are two flavors to Palo Alto Networks SD-WAN. There's one flavor whereby you can simply add in another license, like I said, and then our other flavor or iteration, if you will, is CloudGenic. So a little too much to unpack there in terms of what's different, what makes more sense for organization. If you do have any questions on that, obviously, like I said, reach out to Laura. The other piece that really speaks to me as kind of a networking geek is zero-touch provisioning. So, and it's again, something that was released on 9.1.3, but it's far more robust in 10.0. And I'd also contend that it's the one that's really speaking to a lot of our customers, because during COVID, most folks want to limit the amount of times, or they want to limit individuals physically going on site. So in short, zero-touch provisioning is a feature that allows for devices to be configured automatically with minimal need for we'll say, manual human intervention. So generally speaking, when an organization purchases, we'll say a network box, and it's going to a branch site, in order to make any sort of configuration change, your network admin has to log in. They jump into that CLI or that command line interface. And what they're doing is they're putting in commands. And everyone on the call, we all know how painful that is. And if there's multiple devices, guess what? You got to do that one by one by one. So rather than with zero-touch provisioning, rather than using that command line interface, you're now using a GUI that uses code and scripts to push out configuration changes or changes in a standardized fashion. The beauty is you ship a box, you rack it, you stack it, and you plug it in. The software takes care of the rest. So it's really nice. And when I look at this, when we talk to IT directors, CIOs, network folks, SOC folks, what they tell us is two primary things. They're looking to reduce complexity within their environment, and they're looking to obtain operational efficiency. For me, when I see zero-touch provisioning, that kind of accomplishes both, or at least specifically operational efficiency. So I'll put a muzzle on myself for one moment. Thomas, I know you and I love to geek out over the zero-touch provisioning thing, but anything I potentially miss?
No, just probably we need to remind the audience that you're the sales guy, I'm the technical engineer, so you're covering all of this. I'm good. Just makes my job so much easier, right? So yeah, I mean, SD-WAN is one of these things that are, it's been out there for some time, and Tom already covered all this basics already. So when you think about SD-WAN, just thinking about, if you're talking about, the drivers, the big business drivers for SD-WAN are, of course, get rid of that MPLS, right? That's a big piece of it, right? From a cost perspective, right? They of course, that will also gain you a nice way of orchestrating all your infrastructure together under the SD-WAN fabric, and of course, allowing your office-to-office communications, office-to-hub communications, and all that configuration is done really by the system. The administrator doesn't have to deal with that, right? But the other big focus there is obviously application, right? It's more application centric, right? Meaning that, hey, I really have some really important applications, maybe one or two of these applications just cannot go down, right? So you have multiple circuits going to your office. The SD-WAN sees that. It says, wait a minute, this application needs to have the best livable path, right? And if there's something wrong with that path, they'll move that application to a different path, so that it actually always have the best bandwidth and the best circuit to service that application and service the end user, right? So those are the big drivers, right? A lot of people get confused that SD-WAN is simply used to load balance circuits and stuff like that. That type of feature is already there. You don't have to use SD-WAN to do stuff like that. But remember, SD-WAN equals what? Simplicity, cost savings, and of course, better application performance, right? Back to you, Tom.
Bada bing, bada boom. I see some questions coming in. Please continue to input those questions in the box. We're not ignoring you. We're simply going to field those after the presentation. So I'm got my other monitor up here, and I'm seeing that we've got some in. So feel free to pepper us with some questions. Ask us the tough questions. Hold our feet to the fire. We're all for that. So we spoke to machine learning. We spoke to SD-WAN. One of the things that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention is DLP. DLP, it's got a very long history, right? Vontu kind of created that space. They brought it to market. You saw folks like I want to say it was Symantec who actually acquired them, gobbled them up. Then you see some other players out there today doing it: ForcePoint, Proofpoint, McAfee, so on and so forth. It's kind of the usual suspects. Over the years, what our customers have really told us is that perimeter firewalls and EDR, or kind of conventional antivirus, is really great for preventing attacks, but customers are still looking to use data loss prevention to address the fundamental problem of data loss. It always boils down to candidly a couple things. The first is naturally compliance. So things like CCPA, GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, if you're doing credit cards. And historically, I think folks DLP is difficult now because things are far more complex. Historically speaking, or traditionally speaking, everything's been managed within the four walls of your data center. You feel warm and fuzzy, it's there, you can manage it, it's in the capsule, in the moat. Now you've got things like AWS, GCP, Azure, SaaS-based applications. So how do you manage that? And as I progress into the next slide here, we'll kind of look at some of the, we'll say, drawbacks or shortcomings associated with a traditional DLP model. So in a conventional model, you'll always almost see a proxy in a DLP appliance using ICAP. So I suppose just if I'm pontificating, or if I'm just thinking out loud, right? What's fundamentally wrong with this? Well, the obvious is beyond being extremely dated, ICAP's a proxy only protocol, right? So it requires a proxy to be present. Second, performance is really inhibited when you're operating at scale, right? ICAP wasn't really, it was really built to offload web servers off other tasks like AV scanning, content translation, not really true DLP. Third, as I kind of alluded to, and as I alluded to, it's the whole migration to the cloud, right? It's almost impossible to deploy here. So this is where you sort of see the rise of things like CASBs, your Netscopes of the world, so on and so forth. And there's nothing greatly wrong with that. It's just, again, it really boils down to complexity. It boils down to operational efficiency, because at the end of the day, now you have a second proxy for your cloud-based traffic, your internet traffic, and you potentially have two disparate solutions: your on-prem DLP and now your CASB. And it's difficult, at least when we talk to folks, it's difficult for them to standardize policies, two UIs, again, more to manage. So that said, people have been wanting to do DLP on their firewalls for a long time. The challenge is firewalls haven't traditionally had the throughput to provide it. So our approach to DLP is a little different. We have two goals in mind. One is remove complexity. The other is reduce cost. So what we did was we built the DLP engine as a SaaS service, so it's not fixed to something like a hardware platform that's naturally pretty costly. The real beauty of having it up in the cloud is there's no hardware limitations, right? It's elastic scale, scales up, scales down for seasonal upticks, downturns, so on and so forth. It's licensed, once again, licensed on the firewall, right? Analogous to wildfire or threat prevention. Since it's deployed, as a cloud service, there's no servers to deploy. There's no updates to maintain either. And Thomas is probably smiling right now. You don't have to use ICAP. So from our perspective, it really boils down to vendor consolidation. It really boils down to reducing total cost of ownership. You're configuring your pattern, your profile once, and it syncs to the entire platform. So you don't have to deal with proxy rewriting issues, additional endpoint touch, pack files to push up. I'm not going to read all the features on the slide, but what I do want you to know is it's a full-fledged DLP service, and we're very excited about it. We feel like it's something pretty compelling for our customer base. Thomas, I know Thomas has Thomas is also very modest. He has a very rich history when it pertains to DLP. In fact, he very much was sort of one of the pioneers in deploying DLP. So Thomas, again, I'll let you kind of unpack this a little further for us.
No, sure. I mean, DLP, one of my favorite subjects. Can you go back to slide 13? Yeah, this slide.
This
here.
one?
Yeah, that slide right there. So just folks, I think Laura earlier mentioned that SNL has been around 23 years. Out of the 23 years, I've known SNL 21 years. So the reason I brought that up is because 20 years ago, literally, is this protocol is very dated. I was one of the engineers actually make that request into, at that time, a company called Blue Coat Systems. And we helped create the protocol. Just a little history there. The ICAP protocol is actually put in by a company called Network Appliance. And Network Appliance, of course, does storage. And once upon a time, they actually had a product called NetCache. And there were two gentlemen actually created that, submitted the ICAP protocol for review. And of course, Blue Coat at that time actually acquired the NetCache division. And then, of course, we incorporated at that time the ICAP protocol into there. The reason I want to give you that sort of that background there is that deploying ICAP services is not a trivial thing. There's a lot of scars on my back that probably it's not a good time to at least show you guys, but you know, after a couple of years, I'll share some stories there. ICAP is very cumbersome, very intensive, married with a proxy. And of course, we get that. Why did we get all that traffic? And we keep using the word proxy. Why do we want to bring that up, right? It's because the traffic flow from the end user, whether it's on the user on the network or off network, you have to get that traffic somehow to the proxy. And a proxy, what it does is acting on behalf of the client, right? Now, you're going to say, hey, Thomas, there's a firewall there. Well, why don't you turn it on? Well, 20 years ago, the firewall, and still today, most of the firewalls, when we say stateful firewalls, not until Palo in 2007 came about, stateful firewall is exactly what it does. It does network translation really well, stateful inspection. You try to go up the stack, that firewall is dead in the water, right? And you folks probably on the call know this when you try to do anything that is beyond what the firewall is capable of, right? So in order to get traffic to do things like scanners, like DLP, URL filtering, language translation servers to a number of other services, this protocol was needed at that time, right? Now, why is it so important from a DLP perspective? DLP really came about in 2003, where the first thing that drove the compliancy was Sarbanes-Oxley. I'm sure you folks may have heard of a company called Enron, WorldCom, right? Congress had to act on that, on those to really create some financial stability in the market. Therefore, Sarbanes-Oxley was created. Well, created, how do you enforce it? Well, the proxy and the ICAP came about, right? So that's changed, right? The compliancy stuff is still there. The requirement's still there. Problem is the bad actors nowadays, what do they look for? Well, your company's intellectual property, right? Once upon a time when television was still pretty popular, Channel 6 News, ABC, NBC, the 6 o'clock news, that was really popular at that time. The bad guys were used to design, what do they want to do? Get into your firewall, get through your firewall somehow, whether inside or outside, actually compromise the network, take the network down, especially the big ones, right? And then of course they watch the 6 o'clock news and they watch their handle name or whatever the name they call themselves. Oh, well, that was the claim of fame. Well, today's world, that's changed. They don't care about that anymore. What they care about is they follow the money, guys. They want your personal data. They want the company's intellectual property information, right? IP information, right? Customers, social security, the PCI information, right? HIPAA information. Those are valuable in the document. So DLP by far is more important than ever before. Well, the good news is that Palo Alto actually, with the latest generation of firewalls, we have the capability of doing the DLP on the firewall. That's massive. Before you try to do this, you're gonna have to have point products, and you have a Congo lines of product just to deal with it. Today, not so much anymore, right? So it makes, today, if you want to employ that, if some of the folks on the call already have Palo Alto, all you do is upgrade the code to the right code, and then of course enable the license. And then once you do that and you create the policy, all the HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, all the definition already created for you. It's just now a policy. Mind you, you do have to decrypt SSL, and you want to decrypt SSL because that's another blind spot for you. So that's why DLP is so important, more than ever before. Before, the bad guys was about claim of fame. Now they want your data without you knowing it. So let's make sure that we plug that hole. Anyway, I'm a little bit passionate about this. So guys, I apologize for that, but I'm very passionate about this topic. So,
no, it's interesting, Thomas. As you know, I'm always a numbers guy, and I actually read the other day another thing. I read another data point. I think it was actually a Forrester Gartner article again. They were estimating that anywhere from 50% or 2/3 of a company's value exists in their intellectual property. So I don't think you have to apologize for reiterating the significance of DLP. So folks, as I mentioned, sort of key takeaways associated with 10.0: new UI, major release, 70 new features. We recognize that some may be more relevant than others to you. Sd-Wan enhancements, machine learning. I don't know, Thomas, if you really want to briefly touch on TLS as well. I think that's pretty important, just how the industry is moving from SSL or to SSL, right? 4.3 and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, thanks, Bert. That's a big feature, by the way. So TLS 1.2 was prevalent out there, right? And then of course 1.3 was coming to for ratification, and then of course now we support that, right? This is maybe a trivial question, or maybe you guys already know this, but just so you know, from an enterprise perspective, regardless of how small our customers or your end users are, all the way to the large organizations with hundreds of thousands of employees, the traffic pattern we're looking at is about 80 to 90% of that data is encrypted. So if you have not considered doing SSL inspection, not only for DLP purposes, but also for security reasons, you want to look at that, right? And look at least put it on your radar to say we need to deal with it. And predominantly TLS 1.3 or 1.2 is still very much in the play, but of course 1.3 is already available in $10 code, so it's there, and it's a very significant feature, guys. Those are big number. I mean, that's a big feature for anyone to do. So just heads up.
So why don't we do this? And SNL team, feel free to chime in. We don't. We know this isn't just our show. Well, why don't we field some of these questions? So, Mr. Chan, we'll address. You had 2 questions. So why don't we start with your second question in the theme of DLP? So, Mr. Chan wants to know, how is DLP integrated into URL filtering? Thomas, can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's really big, by the way. So there's a thing called, in the DLP world, you know that there are 3 types of DLP, right? There's data at rest, data in motion. So data at rest is really your storage, your application servers and stuff like that. Is where the data like it suggests, sits there, right? And then of course you have data in motion, which is your network, sort of the data security, flying through data actually flying through the network, right? And then of course data in use, right? So to answer the question about DLP integrating into URL filtering, that's very important, right? Because in any case, when you're handling data, you gotta have the right context, right? The right content in the right context. What does that mean? Well, here's an example, right? Let's say I'm an accounting person, right? And I'm processing some financial data, and I have access to the company's information, like PI information, right? And I need to correspond with my business partners. And that data needs to move back and forth between my business partners. That is I have the right content in the right context, right? But I am an accounting person. At the same time, somehow my traffic is heading into Russia or heading into China that we don't do business with, right? So therefore, well, the URL filtering database is there to help you to, when you create the policy, you know what? Any of my PI information, they could interact with my business partners that reside in the country. But if they decide to leave the country, they better be authorized. Otherwise, they may be either blocked off, notified, or notified and blocked off. Whatever the sequence or the response you want to set, that's up to you, right? Like a good example would be, the other big piece is like decrypting SSL, looking for DLP data, right? So when you tie it back to the URL filtering piece, things like healthcare sites, banking sites, well, we don't want to decrypt that, but URL filtering actually comes into handy. So they play hand in hand with each other, right? So URL filtering is very powerful, and you should have to have it, right? And I think there's a second piece of question coming from Mr. Chan. Same thing is about ZPT, zero touch provisioning requirement at Panorama? The answer is yes, we do require Panorama for that. Right?
And for those of you who are not aware, Panorama is our central management console. Folks, and Thomas, thank you for the comprehensive and thorough responses.
Folks, anything about DLP related, please, get SNL involved, get us involved. We're there to help you. Just so you guys already know my background. So it's, I have a lot of experience in the DLP space, done a lot of stuff, a lot of work there, not only dealing with the protocol level to perspective to help deploying some of the largest DLP in the largest environment out there. So just let me know. I can definitely help you.
Excellent. Folks, we'll field any more questions, Q&A, if anyone wants to input them. And SNL crew or team, Laura, any final thoughts?
Oh, this is Jim with SNL. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask everyone if they've looked at going to version 10, if that's on their roadmap at all, and if not, what are some of the issues that you currently foresee that would prevent you from doing that? Is that kind of just a green light, or we'll do it when we get the time? Or what we find a lot is, well, everybody's working remotely. The last thing we want to do is a firewall upgrade. That's really kind of the critical part of their network, and for most people, it's really their core now, believe it or not. So that's what we're seeing. Is that something that most folks are presently encountering? That kind of your day to day? Is that your reality today?
Yeah, I feel like we almost need a poll for that.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't ask a question when it's everybody has to type the response. I'm going to assume that's what the case is for most folks.
I think it's a fair point, Jim. I think the goal is always to be as stable and as least disruptive to the environment. I totally get that. I think that probably resonates with a lot of our customers. I think that's a common theme. Yeah, right. And you see Tim's comment, I usually let major releases bake for a while. Totally get that. All right, you want to see what version makes sense. Totally get it. Mark also reiterating that. So yeah, I think that's like, again, we want to make this clear with everyone. The goal today is from Palo Alto Network side, from SNL side, is we don't want anyone to feel like you need to get overzealous and you need to jump to 10.0 tomorrow. That's really not the goal here. Let us vet this thing 3, 4, 5, 6 months. If it makes sense, reach out to Jim, reach out to Laura, reach out to Thomas or myself, and we're a resource to you. And we can kind of dissect or walk through together what code makes sense for you.
Right. And this is Jim again. And one of the things that we can help you with, since there's kind of a ramp time, is that if you'd like, we can work with you for a guided best practice assessment, which is great because it really kind of gives you a good kind of a sit rep, if you will, for where you are with your security posture. So when you're kind of putting that version 10 release on your roadmap of kind of things to do, a BPA would be a great way to kind of augment that, so you can see what my dog is thinking that's a great idea too. So you can see where you are as far as the things that you should tweak or tune, right? So that's something we can help you do now, right, as you're planning for that version 10 upgrade.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, folks, I believe that that concludes the session today. Once again, we greatly appreciate everyone for joining, and as a thank you or in return for attending today, you'll be receiving a $25 e-gift card to Grubhub. So without further ado, thank you so much, and that concludes today's session. Cheers, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.